On today's Olympic Hockey Daily, we are talking all things women's hockey analytics with Mike Murphy of the Ice Garden.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Olympic hockey edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here as always with Ann Kimmel of Locked On Predators. Where can people find you, Ann?
You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
How's it going today? We are recording this episode on Sunday, so it'll be before those semifinal games, but it is about to be Super Bowl time, and our minds are still on the Olympic hockey tournament.
That is for sure. I mean, excited about the Super Bowl, but we have such great Olympics hockey to talk about today. I can't wait to get to it.
Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, and you can watch us over on YouTube. All right, so before we get to our conversation with Mike Murphy, again, just want to reiterate that we had this conversation on Sunday. So we are talking more in general with him about analytics and in this tournament and in women's hockey overall. He had some really fascinating things to say about some of the teams and players that stood out to him so far in this Olympics, as well as, what's going on in the current state of women's hockey analytics and the data available. So much good stuff. All right. So, one of the more interesting aspects to me about women's hockey is the analytics side of things and what is and isn't possible with the data we have. And we have the perfect person to talk to about that on today's show. And we are thrilled to welcome from the Ice Garden, Mike Murphy, who's been covering women's hockey for as long as I can remember and always has great insight into what's going on out there. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and I'm glad I already have way too much to live up to, but here we go.
All right. So just to get going, how has this women's Olympic tournament been for you so far? Has there been any big surprises that have jumped out?
We always get so excited for these. It's every 4 years the women's game gets the spotlight it deserves full time. And we get so excited. The storyline that, in mainstream media is always about USA, Canada. And that, I understand why it helps build things and get, people interested, sponsors, all that stuff. But the thing that stood out the most to me about this year's game so far is what we've seen from the other nations. Like Group B was outstanding. The games were outstanding. Just before I came on the show, I was looking at there's a great storyline for every team. Like Denmark beat Czechia. That's unbelievable. China, Japan in a shootout, which is again unbelievable. Like every team has something they can come away from the games with and feel really good about. That's my biggest takeaway. I'm very much frustrated by some of the things that have been said about the women's games in Olympics that have driven me a little nuts, but I don't want to add any more attention to any of that beyond saying if you watch all the games and you appreciate the context of everything, it's been a really wonderful tournament. We could talk about, oh, wow, Canada's been so dominant, when we could say, look how good Sarah Fillier has been with Meldau out, who's like one of the best 5 forwards on the planet. Mm-hmm. And Canada hasn't missed a beat because Sarah Fillier is, just 21 years old, I think, is just in her first Olympics, is lighting the world on just 8 goals in 5 games. Like, oh yeah, she's going to be pretty special. So that's what I focus on, is all these stories outside of the mainstream ones that are so fun.
So let's dive into some of the analytics talk. We know that data available for women's hockey is kind of varied in terms of, what is collected and what is publicly available data for that. So for those people who aren't as familiar, can you kind of describe the general landscape of women's hockey analytics and what's really out there and available for different levels, college and pro and international levels?
Yeah, so it is varying is a good way to describe it because kind of at each level you get a different thing. The most robust, I call it like boxcar stats, the sort of things you want in the back of a hockey card. Your goals, your assists, points, plus minus penalty minutes. The collegiate game has a lot of those, but only really specifically for the US, for NCAA Division One. Division Three data is very hard to come by. U Sports college hockey in Canada is very hard to come by in terms of robust public data, which is frustrating because we can learn so much about the development of players by looking at college numbers. The pro game has this ebb and flow. Like some years we have more, some years we have less, and it's really frustrating. And then you have data integrity problems because for the most part it's volunteers for both the PWHPA and the PHF who are doing this, and I'm so grateful we have people who are volunteering, but you do have issues of people being short-staffed, but in a bind where, what data can we get? It's not always the most reliable. And then you have, the major international tournaments where we have things like it's a sad state of affairs, but a luxury in women's hockey is having something like time on ice. When you have time on ice, you can have rate statistics. When you have rate statistics, you can get a better understanding of the context of players' performances. And the fact that we still don't have that for the pro game and even frankly for like the collegiate game is a pretty big bummer. But when people kind of gripe about that, I point to something like if you look at like the AHL, the American Hockey League's website, they don't have time on ice on their website, not like the NHL does. And it's very tempting to compare where data is in the women's game to the men's game. But I also think you need to understand where support, like, Title IX and like understanding the whole timeline of how we got to where we are now. It's still pretty new. And there's a lot of stuff that's encouraging to see. And there's a lot of people who are really invested in data and making it public. And that's great to see because it literally does get better every year. And that's kind of what I focus on is not what we don't have, but what we've been building. And for the most part, it's been getting better and better by the year.
For these international hockey tournaments, given that they're short form tournaments as opposed to a longer season's worth of data, like what particular data or stats do you most often look to measure trends or individual performance?
Yeah, it's this wonderful catch-22. We have so much more public data for the Olympics and Worlds and even U18s and stuff, and it's all there. And then we have, they play 5 or 7 games, and so you have to judge these players by a 5 or 7 game window against the very best competition in the world, or against other nations that, like, when you try to compare, how did Switzerland do against Canada? Well, Canada has this long history of its national team program. They get fully supported by a national team stipend. Switzerland doesn't have that. Switzerland just had to come together, have a quick camp, go to the Olympics. So it's like, why are we comparing these two things like they're equal? Any success that Switzerland has is worth our attention. But it's really interesting to me to look at the context. I like to understand what players do in their group, to looking at where the Group A teams are, how they compete against each other. I really like to look at rate statistics when we have them. So I like to look at things like primary points and how much ice time players are getting, specifically, these younger players, because if coaching staffs feel comfortable putting, younger players out on the ice for 18, 20 minutes a game, that tells you a lot about what that younger player's impact might be. It's a good kind of indicator, like, let's look closer at the numbers. Why is this player getting so much ice time? And those are just things we can't do for the pro women's game or even collegiate hockey. But I like to look at just primary points per 60 when I get to go through all the stats and put everything together. And then for goalies, I really focus on workload, which is my general stat for workload is just shots against per 60, which is just a way of understanding how hard a goalie has to work in 60 minutes on average. And if you're in Group A and you're, Team Switzerland's goalie, Andrea Brandley, and you're playing Team Canada, you're going to face a lot of shots. So if you finish with like an 880 save percentage, people might be like, oh, you had a bad game. But hold on, Andrea Brandley had like 48 saves. Why are we saying she had a bad game?
Right.
And
Right.
how many of those
Yes.
goals were scored on the power play? And how much time did her team, how bad was the shot differential? She may have finished with an 880 save percentage, but she may have kept that game from being, a landslide one way or the other. So I look at those things. The big thing is always context, especially when we have to like put a microscope to these really small sample sizes.
So let's talk about a couple statistics with Team USA. So they have the highest shots on goal in the tournament as of our recording time, but they have a pretty low conversion rate at 8.2%. So, which it's about mid-pack in the tournament. What do you think accounts for their lack of finishing on their shots?
It's a great question. Like, look, I think they might miss Brianna Decker more than some people make it out to believe. She's one of the best players in the world at creating offense. But I also think they're a team that their power play just often is way underwhelming. And so when you have a power play that overperforms, your shooting percentage overall will get higher than it might be otherwise. I think that's a big deal. You look at they have Hillary Knight, who's the best finisher ever in women's hockey, in my opinion, just in terms of she scores, looking at her numbers over the years in tournaments on the power play, she scores a whole lot. At even strength, she scores a whole lot. She's just very good at scoring goals. And you look at that team and you say, why aren't they scoring more than, but I think the other thing is Canada had, games where they shot literally like 25%. 1 out of every 4 shots they took went into the net. So that throws off the context of what Team USA is doing. And look like, oh, why aren't they doing as well as Canada? Just because, anything can happen in 60 minutes is the short answer. So some nights the opposing goalie stands on her head, and some nights she makes more saves against Team USA than Team Canada. But overall, I think there's some questions about Joel Johnson's decisions as a head coach.
Listen,
but I am not.
Have you come to the right place?
I am not myself a coach. I am just a nerd who likes numbers and women's hockey. But I wonder if he's doing enough to optimize his lineup, especially when you look at the ice times, especially when you look at line pairings and what he's doing to put players in a position to succeed, especially on the power play. It's frustrating because you see the potential in that lineup, and like watching the game where they played against Czechia and they didn't score until Czechia scored on their first shot halfway through, the second period. And you're just shaking your head as like, that's an amazing story for Czechia. But what does that say about Team USA? Obviously, Klara Pestarova, Czechia's goaltender, got her moment in the sun, which she really deserves. She's a great goalie, but my goodness, how do you not deliver on one of those scoring chances? How do you not deliver on those power play opportunities? It makes you think maybe you should spend more time putting together a power play strategy. It seems like an important thing to have.
It does. Yes, you're not wrong.
Little important.
There's, I think, 2 main questions other than the power play, of course, which is, I think, the biggest question. But you have been specifically banging the drum for Jinsey Dunn and Caroline Harvey to some extent to get more ice time for Team USA. Like, what brings you to that conclusion, and what do you think they could bring out there that maybe they're missing?
What I always think is like when you see, right after I got a banging the drum, like you said, I looked at Team Canada's, how they spread out their ice time across their D. It's a lot more level. Team Canada is using all 7 of their D. And what does Team Canada have to show for it? Claire Thompson has set an Olympic record for points in a single Olympics as a defender. Oh, and how much ice time is she getting? Only like 15 minutes a night. But here's the thing. She's moving the puck and instigating offense like a Jinx Dunn, like a Caroline Harvey, that like, yeah, you can put players in a position to succeed. And giving them 3 minutes, 6 minutes of ice time is not doing that. I also know he, like a turnover, I believe it was a turnover made by Jincy or Caroline, and then like they were just benched for the rest of the game. It's like,
How's that helpful?
I've never understood that approach by coaches. I think it's detrimental. I think it hurts not just the individual, but the team as a whole. Because then you tell them you cannot play making mistakes. And some players, their strength lies in their creativity, especially players like Jincy who are just mobile, excellent puck moving defenders. She will make mistakes with the puck. She'll make a lot more brilliant plays with the puck than she makes mistakes. Those brilliant plays turn into scoring chances. And when you have like Lee Stecklin on your team to help cover for like a creative play that may have gone awry, you don't have to worry quite as much. Your Team USA, let your creative players be creative, because creativity leads to scoring chances. It kind of boggles my mind that Jincy's gotten this little ice time because she had to work her tail off to be here. And the fact that she's even here is a huge accomplishment. And then you look at the fact that she's had the production she's had with as little ice time as she's had, and you're like, the dots don't connect. Why would you not say, hey, you know what, Kayla Barnes, you don't need to play that much time on the power play or at even strength. We'll sprinkle in some more time for Jincy Dunn. That way, Carolyn Harvey can play, with her foot on the gas pedal to the floor, and Jincy can do the same, and you get more out of everybody instead of this compressed schedule in the Olympics where if you're playing so many players 23, 25 minutes a night, you really run the risk of injury. And then all of a sudden you'll find yourself in a gold medal game where, oh yeah, Carolyn and Jincy, I know you've been playing 5 minutes a night, but we need you now. Like it's, the script writes itself. It's not a good way to approach, distribution of ice time.
And we'll have more with Mike Murphy coming up in just a moment. But first, want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Football might be over for the season, but basketball is full steam ahead for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Once again, thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. And here is the second half of our conversation with Mike Murphy from the Ice Garden.
So let's talk about Canada and their special teams. Their power play is at 50%. Their penalty kill is at 93%. What can be done against this team on either of those?
I'm not sure.
50%. 50%.
50%.
Yeah, a 25%
Nobody touched
power
the
play
Canadians,
is really good.
Yeah.
A 25% power play is really good. So 50% is like, oh, uh-oh. I think the short answer is don't take penalties,
Amen.
which is very hard to do because they're going to have the puck. But that team is so fun to watch when they have the puck. They have so many different weapons. They have so many different options. Like, we're not even talking about how many points Natalie Spooner has. And we're
Which
not
is
even
crazy. It's been extraordinary to me. I mean, I understand Sarah Fillier is having a breakout tournament, but Natalie Spooner is sitting right there.
Yeah, I think she has 13 points already. And Sarah, I know, but the other thing is like, oh, a lot of those are assists. Like Poulin is like, I think has 12 points, 10 of them are assists or something like that. And it's like, oh yeah, they're just casually like 2 points a game. And they have the thing is they have so many players who are doing that. You're just like, oh, well, then she's doing it too. The thing is, they're all doing it together, and that's why they're just this terror right now. Like I look at that team even without, like I was saying earlier, like without Melody Daou, is like a top 5 forward on the planet, if not a player. They're fine and they're terrifying, and that in and of itself is such a powerful statement as to what this team is capable of. And behind all that, with Nuraratu not in the tournament, I think Anne Renee Debien's the best goalie in the tournament. So in the unlikely event that they have a lapse in their penalty killing, then you have to try and beat Debian. It's really rough.
It's almost
really
not
rough.
fair. It's almost not fair, but you have to give them credit for developing this squad and this program, and having talent like Anne Renee Debian, who is absolutely a joy to watch, honestly. Regardless of my personal rooting interests, I will watch her play in net any day of the week. I do want to talk a little bit about goaltending real quick. And I've been asking this of everyone we've come on the show to talk about the women's tournament. I'm a bit flabbergasted by Team USA's goalie choices from game to game. Hasn't seemed to have a specific rhyme or reason to it. Do you have any insight into that?
Not a lick. I talked to a few people who were doing some coverage of the Olympics before this, and they wanted to pick my brain about like who's the starter, and I would tell them I couldn't tell you. And that's really the case in every tournament with Team USA. It seems like the program's like oath here is to say who seems like they're having a good day. That's who we're going to go with. And looking at the worlds is like Nicole Hensley was great. But then in the My Y tour against Team Canada, the rivalry series, her numbers weren't great. So it's like, is Nicole Hensley the starter? Is it Maddie Rooney? Maddie Rooney fell out of favor. Then she fell back into favor. Is it Alex Cavallini, who's like the veteran of the group, who's been here for a while, but really hasn't made an impact on the Olympic stage? And you're like, okay, I don't know. And meanwhile, I'm sitting around here, like, why isn't Erin Frankel here in the first place? Because she would be my go-to starter for all these games. If push comes to shove, I think I like Nicole Hensley's game the most. But that's
what I've been
tough.
struggling with, because they just haven't been putting her in, and I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some vague coaching explanation to this where he goes with whoever looks sharp in practice or whoever has the glint in their eye in the locker room or whatever the heck you want to go with, whatever Disney movie moment you want. But overall, it's just it's so vexing to me because I don't know why they go with who they go with when they go with. Like Canada is like, all right, yeah, it's pretty clear it's Debian. They also have Emmerich Smashmeyer, who's a brilliant goaltender. But they played Mashmeyer in a quote unquote easier game to make sure you don't overwork your goalie, because this is a lot of games in a condensed schedule. Even earlier in the tournament, Team Japan, when they had a game in hand, Nana Fujimoto is going to play every minute she can. But when they had the game in hand, they took her out midway through the third period, I think, and the backup finished the game. And it's like, yeah, it's very clear. The roles here are super clear. Mm-hmm. It's not at all the case with Team USA. I couldn't tell you who the favorite is. I think they like that because it's the mind games thing is like, oh, who's Canada facing? They don't know. But Canada knows all three of these goalies anyway. It's not going to make a difference. So
that is
I wish
fair
I could
point
tell
as
you.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Wish I
yeah,
could
tell you. It's been a fascinating aspect of this whole thing to watch. You're just not getting a goalie that's can be consistently hot because they're just swapping in and out. So fascinating. So in all of your work over this tournament, the Olympic tournament, is there a particular individual or a team storyline that really has jumped out at you that you think is most interesting?
There's so much to love about this tournament and the players in it.
Mm-hmm.
I went into this tournament thinking that Czechia would really just like run amok and dominate Group B. And they had a hard, even though they played great hockey, because frankly, like, I underestimated how far along Denmark was. I consistently underestimate Team Japan. I should start to learn that lesson. And I think that one story that is really a big deal that we'll understand in a few years how big of a deal it really is Sweden's ability to get into the quarterfinals after its fall from grace is a tremendous story. Because it wasn't that long ago when they were a real power in the women's game, to the point where they were in that conversation with, like, oh, they're up there with Finland, like right on the verge of being in that top tier. And then the national team program kind of fell apart with bad coaching, bad management, bad development. They reinvested a lot of money in the SDHL. They tried to turn things around. They put a priority on developing Swedish talent. And we're getting to see some of that now. And that's huge. Like, Emma Soderberg had an unbelievable tournament. I know she had,
she's one of my
go to the
faves.
quarter.
So
Yeah. Looking at her performance, I was like, is this this is the Sarah Grahn they've been waiting for? Like the next great, because when you think of these teams like the Switzerlands of the world, these teams that are on the rise, teams like Czechia, a brilliant goalie transforms everything in terms of what they're capable of. And if Sweden feels like they found that, it's a game changer because she's still so young and there are so many tournaments ahead. You just got to climb your way back up to the top division and make noise when you get there. And that has to be it. The other thing, selfishly, is Alina Muller being healthy. And being Alina Muller is awesome for the women's game because you look at, like, the scoring leaders and you just see Canadian flags. And then you see that Swiss flag. And then you see Team USA. I think it's Hillary Knight who's after as the second non-Canadian highest scoring skater. And that in and of itself is such a big deal to me. It's like, one of the best players in the world is Swiss, and we have to talk about it. And that means we can't just talk USA, Canada all the time. You have to pay respect to the rest of the field. You have to pay respect to the women's game outside of North American borders. And stars like Alina Muller, like Laura Stalder, they demand our respect, like Petra Nieminen. Like, you can't discredit what these other programs are doing. And having her get hurt at Worlds was such a bummer. And everyone is thinking, like, do you remember what she did in 2018 Olympics? Like, she arrived, she was the superstar. And it's like, all right, well, how far along, is she really healthy? All these things. She's been unbelievable. And that to me is a win for women's hockey when one of its brightest young stars is healthy again and has played her team into the semifinals now. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it was so impressive in that quarterfinal game against ROC between Alina Muller and Laura Stalder. The two of them just carried that team through, and it was an amazing performance, I think.
Yeah, that duo is so fun to watch. Like, Laura Stalder is this dominant force in professional Swedish hockey, and of course, Alina is playing Northeastern. And I don't think Laura Stalder ever gets enough credit for how good she really is, because the SDHL is a really tough league to play in. North American players go there. Some really thrive. Some are brilliant, like Kennedy Marchman, who's now tearing it up in the PHF. But others, they are first-line players, but they don't dominate the league. They don't take over the league. Laura Stalder is just, like, it's not fair what she's able to do in that league with how good she is with Brynäs. And seeing her find the success here, because it was tough watching her have to do everything, it seemed like, with the puck, because Switzerland can skate, they can move the puck, but in the offensive zone, their solution, especially on the power play, is like, get the puck to Laura, hope things work out. And when you didn't have Alina Muller, when you didn't have the target for Stalder's creativity, it was really tough on Switzerland, and they had a really rough tournament. And now they're both here, and look where Switzerland is. And that is a great story to me, is getting to see them, both players in their prime, on the biggest stage in the world, playing great hockey. And that's awesome.
So, kind of wrapping up this conversation and getting back to some general look at analytics in women's hockey, do you see different needs for women's hockey versus men's hockey? I mean, obviously hits aren't a thing in women's hockey. But in terms of models and variables being developed, do you see analytics going in different paths for the games?
I think one of my favorite things when I talk to folks who do analytics in men's hockey and they start to look into women's hockey and they realize that no hitting isn't a bad thing. It dawns on them that,
Yes.
oh, no hitting means it's more passing and skill and teamwork. And I say, yeah, that's why everyone who
Yes.
loves women's hockey raves about it. Because what do you love in hockey? It's like, oh, I love when teams have the puck and they can do things, and I love good, clean, outstanding defensive play. That's all you're allowed to have in women's hockey. Your solution can't be to cross-check someone. Your solution can't be to haul someone down or knock them over because you're 6'8" and they're
I mean,
6'2".
you can, but it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah.
but it's not going to go well. And that, I think, is a lot of what we do, I often describe it as kind of like MacGyvering stuff from men's hockey. It's like, all right, you have game score in men's hockey. Like Sean Ferris worked with game score for the then and WHL. I revisited it and applied primary points, but I just looked at what the NHL model was, which was made by Dom, who has a very complicated last name and is a lovely person. And every time I attempt his name, I make a fool of myself, so I won't do it here. But everyone knows Dom from The Athletic. And I just adapted his model, and I said, yeah, this is a tool we can use in women's hockey, all the while knowing it's flawed because we can't use the same metrics and the same tools for the women's game as we use for the men's game. And more we see projects and we see studies done with people looking at what the impact is of you can't hit somebody. And what it means is zone entries are different. The way you carry the puck through the neutral zone is different. The way you move the puck around, the areas of the ice you can get to are different. It's a different game, but it's the same game. What I like about it most, and I say this with confidence, the game demands more skill. You need to be better at skating and have better vision in women's hockey. And you need to be a radically more intelligent defender because you can edge people out and you can rub them off along the boards to dispossess them of the puck and you can body people, but you cannot just do an open ice body check. So the stick work we see by defenders is so much more advanced than you might see in some men's hockey games. And like everyone's always working their stick, taking away passing lanes, taking away shooting lanes. Like just the other night, I made a GIF of a player on the Minnesota Whitecaps making a beautiful defensive play on Michaela Grant-Mentis, where it just like it was like poetry, the stick work, and then everything just moved. The play just moves on. Like the announcers don't make a big deal of it, and anything. I'm just like, that was a work of art. That should be on the wall somewhere. That was a perfect like stick check on a recovery play. But that's routine for women's hockey. You have to be that good with your stick. There's no other option because you can't just overpower and crush people. You have to think ahead. You have to move the puck. You have to get your teammates involved with the puck. And puck possession is that much more important because it's harder to regain the puck. So the way you manage the puck is a lot more difficult. And that to me makes the women's game better. And it also means, well, I shouldn't say better. That's a very strong word. It makes the women's game so captivating to me, but also demands that we look at it with different tools and we treat it as its own thing. We can learn lessons from what we do in analytics with men's hockey, and we certainly can and will. But just in the same way, you can borrow things that we do with baseball analytics and basketball analytics. Like obviously, there's a lot more crossover when we're looking at hockey versus hockey, but a lot of those differences are things to celebrate and not things where, some guy in a tank top just says, there's no hitting, I'm not interested. I don't care that you're not interested. Because if you gave it a chance and you looked at it, you would see this is the game you love, just played in a little different way. And that's what makes it great to me.
Yes, I just had a conversation about that exact thing, about how watching women's hockey is a different experience. And I will say in the conversation that I was in, it was better. It was, wow, I appreciate hockey more. watching the women's game. So yeah, interesting perspective.
Well, Mike, this has been tremendous. So much insight, and you have a treasure of knowledge to draw from. So we appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find you out there?
You can find me right over at the Ice Garden. I write at Blue Shirt Banner and SB Nation. I own and operate a website called Their Hockey Counts, which has a lot of women's hockey data in it. All the data and stuff I do, I make public and free because that's important to me because, frankly, we don't have enough stuff to not make free. So we have to make sure stuff is free so we can keep moving things forward. But I'm on Twitter at DigDeepBSB. Thanks for having me.
Once again, thanks to Mike Murphy for joining us on today's show. Man, there was so much good stuff in there, right?
It was amazing. Could have talked to him for a lot longer, but we had to keep it semi-brief. But great stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back again this afternoon with another Olympic Hockey Daily episode. We're going to look at the men's tournament preliminaries and how that wrapped up and what that means for their playoffs. And then we're also going to take a look at the women's semifinal action and the medal games on tap for later in the week. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.